So, what is paper residency? Today, we're going to dive into an exciting topic that could change the way that you think about residencies and citizenships. In this video, we're going to explore the topic of paper residency, what it is, what are the pros, what are the cons, and we'll kind of dive into some aspects of paper residency that you're probably not already aware of. So, where did this term come from? Nomad capitalist Andrew Henderson claims to have coined the term paper residency some years ago, but obviously this process has been in existence for many years, if not decades. And honestly, it was probably a lot easier years ago than it is now, and we think it's going to get harder in the future, but we'll come to that later in the video. So, paper residency is this term that's sort of used to describe an alternative path to obtaining citizenship in certain countries without the need to live there full time. And it's also used to describe residencies that you can maintain with very low physical presence. So the basics of paper residency are pretty straightforward. First, you obtain a temporary or permanent residence permit, aka visa, in a country of your choice. This visa is your golden ticket. You put it in your pocket, you leave the country with it, and maybe you only need to visit the country once a year, once every 2 years, once every 3 years. That's what people want to see in a paper residency typically, is you get documentation from a country and you don't have to visit that often to maintain it and keep that residency permit alive. Obviously, all else being equal, it would be great if the residency lasted for life and you never had to renew it. And there are certain residencies, and particularly permanent residencies, that are like that you don't have to renew. And we'll get into that. But pushed to its limit, a paper residency is a residence permit, basically the legal right to live in a country, the legal right to be there all year round. It's basically a step up from a tourist visa. It's the legal right to live there, and you get to maintain that legal right without having to live there 6+ months a year, because obviously if you had to live there 6+ months a year, you can only really do that with one or two countries. But if you had paper residencies, you could theoretically have unlimited. Okay? So the key here is that you don't need to spend most of your time in that country to maintain your paper residency. Depending on the regulations, you might need to pop back in once a year, once every 6 months, once every 3 years, once a decade in some cases. So essentially, it's a bit of a waiting game if you're trying to work towards permanent residency or citizenship, or there's no waiting component because you've already maxed out what you can do, because there are some situations where you can get permanent residency, you can get that PR, but you're not on a path to citizenship for whatever reason, because maybe you have to spend time there. So some paper residencies will lead to citizenship. Some of them sort of max out at PR, but it's still a really good thing to have, a really valuable thing to have. So let's talk about some of the key characteristics of a paper residence. I have 4 main pillars here: legal residency status, minimal physical presence requirements, tax and legal benefits, and compliance with local laws. So let's walk through these 4 pillars one by one. So the first key characteristic of a paper residence is legal residency status. The individual meets the legal requirements to be considered a resident of the country, such as having a registered address or fulfilling specific residency criteria. The second pillar is minimal physical presence. So the individual may spend little to no time actually living in the country, but even still they're able to maintain that residency permit. Their physical presence is often minimal and sometimes just enough to maintain legal requirements. 3 is tax and legal benefits. So the main motivation for maintaining a paper residency for a lot of people is to take advantage of tax benefits, such as lower income tax rates or other legal benefits like easier access to certain banking services. Banking actually could even be a separate pillar right there. So tax benefits are one. You really got to set things up the right way to do that, and you're going to want to use professionals like MyLatinLife to help you get tax residency in a paper residency jurisdiction if that's what you want, because you do have to consider how that's going to affect you where you spend the majority of the year if you do spend the majority of the year in one country and you're not 100% nomadic. And then the other piece of it is the banking services, where if you have paper residency in a country, if you have residency at all in a country, you can usually typically open a bank account there. You can also get other legal benefits like getting a driver's license there. So you get access to banking in this country. You can put your assets in this country, kind of have a safe haven going on. And really it's a tunnel to like a whole lot of business activity, right? So you can see how it can be used more of as a protective measure or as an expansionary measure to expand your business to a new country. And then pillar 4 of a paper residence is compliance with local laws. So despite the minimal presence requirement, individuals must comply with the local laws and regulations to maintain their residency status. This is something you're going to have to keep in mind. This might include filing taxes, filing VAT reports, renewing residency permits, renewing the card, maintaining a local address. So once you get that paper residency, it's a little bit different for every country, but usually there are certain things that you have to do to maintain the residency permit, right? In Paraguay, if you get a tax ID, then you have to file monthly returns or monthly claims, whatever they call it, right? Other paper residencies, if, for example, if you're on temporary and you're working towards permanent, you're going to have to eventually renew to permanent. So you have to keep in mind that you need to start thinking like, okay, in a year or 2 or 4 years from now, I need to go back to this country to renew, right? So just keeping in compliance, keeping it up to date. Usually the requirements aren't too strong when you work with a jurisdiction that you've identified fits your lifestyle. So regarding the ones that lead to citizenship, typically what that looks like is after you've obtained your residency permit, you wait for a specific duration, usually between 3 to 5 years, before you can apply for naturalization. And that depends on the naturalization laws of a particular country, where they say if this person has been a resident for, say, 5 years, then they can apply for citizenship. And what makes this possible, I wouldn't call it a loophole, but it's sort of the way that the constitution of these countries are written. The Constitution, sometimes it's not the Constitution, sometimes it's like the Supreme Court laws or whatever as well. Often it's in the Constitution where it says, yep, just needs to be a resident for 3 to 5 years. And the Constitution or the legal documents backing naturalization don't specify a particular number of days. They might specify having ties to the country, they might specify knowing the national anthem, but they don't specify a particular number of days in the country. And that's the situation where a paper residency could possibly lead to citizenship, because you've been a resident for 5 years. Maybe you've built some ties along the way as well. Maybe you bought real estate or you started a business and hired a bunch of people. Whatever it is, you haven't physically been there all that much, but that's not necessarily a requirement, okay? So countries with paper residency typically have less stringent immigration policies as well. That makes it an attractive option for entrepreneurs and investors who want to broaden their horizons without uprooting their lives. There are a number of paper residencies around the world that can be obtained with low financial requirements, low investment requirements. They're kind of few and far between now. There's probably not as many in 2024 as there were in, say, 2014 in terms of paper residencies where you really don't have to invest that much. Maybe you just need to show up and ask for it. But there still are a few out there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you do have money, if you do have resources, and you are able to park, say, $1 million in the bank somewhere, there's even more paper residencies that open up to you. Things like Cayman Islands, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos, things like that come to mind, where you can get residency by investing in real estate or by investing money in their stock market, and you don't have to spend a lot of time there, right? So that corner of the market is called investment migration. And that's sort of a subset of things. Obviously, there's different types of different situations that can lead to residency. Obviously, you could get married or things like that, and these things can lead to residency and even paper residency, as we're talking about. So there are ones that you can obtain. There are paper residencies that you can obtain without investing money. Maybe you just simply show economic solvency, or you show a university degree, or any number of things. And then there are ones that are more investment migration type of vibe, where if you have significant resources, even more options open up to you. Okay? So imagine that you want to diversify your citizenship portfolio, but you don't want to live in another country for years on end. You're happy where you are, but you know at the back of your mind that you should have a plan B. You should have a plan C in case, World War III comes around or whatever it is. And so paper residency allows you to benefit from a second residence, a second legal country you're allowed to live in, and maybe even eventually citizenship without major lifestyle disruptions. So at MyLatinLife, we have a lot of clients that come to us and they say, I know the USA is getting worse. I know Canada is getting worse. I don't want to leave now, but I want to start putting a plan B in place. And those are the situations where we start looking at paper residencies for these clients and try to get their whole family paper residency somewhere. And we've helped many families do that. People of all ages, we've helped do that. Okay. Now, it's important to note that paper residency doesn't apply to every country. For instance, the United States or France or even El Salvador at this time require you to spend significant time within their borders in order to maintain the residency and to qualify for citizenship. I know in the case of Canada, the permanent residency in Canada is not actually all that permanent. You can lose Canadian PR if you spend too much time outside of Canada. So you might think that that's how it works for every country. But there are countries where they don't care how much time you spend per year or per 2 years in order to maintain the residency, right? So Canada is more strict where they say, hey, if you don't spend, I don't know what it is, like if you don't spend 180 days within a 500-day period, you lose the PR, something like that, right? Whereas there are other countries where they say, hey, just visit 1 day every 2 years, or they don't even have any rules on the books. And obviously that's much more permissive as a plan B or paper residency. Okay, so with paper residencies, we try to choose countries with more flexible requirements. And a little bit, it depends on your situation. Your options as someone living in Australia are going to be a little bit different compared to someone living in the US or Canada, just due to time zones and what jurisdictions and countries are kind of nearby for a flight if you do have to pop in, say, one time per year or something like that. So it's all about finding the right fit for your lifestyles and goals. So if you're looking to expand your global footprint and gain new opportunities, consider exploring paper residency options. MyLatinLife can help with that. You can reach out to us. There's going to be a link in the description where you can book a call with us and get your paper residency plan underway, get your internationalization plan underway, and start making progress immediately. So thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on global citizenship and living the LATAM lifestyle. Until next time.